So we're going to walk through the swamp banks. Our basic pieces are laid out here. We have a straight, a short straight, convex, a small convex, a concave, a small concave, a diagonal, which is essentially a slightly just cosmetically different concave, and an end cap. We'll also be using a 3x3 floor and some stump lumps and some trees and some rocks and some other stuff, but these are the core pieces. We're using our base footprint is 6 inches long by 1.5 inches deep. Everything has a little profile like this. This matches our original banks from the Dread Hollow Forest. And these are designed to fit up against any of our floor pieces. Such. A half unit is 3 inches long, so this is a full unit of 6, a half is 3. And these are primarily designed to be used with negative space. Negative space means the area where the terrain is not, and we'll utilize that. So in this case, we're going to use one of our new texture mats. It's the Swamp Water Texture Mat. And the idea is you use the swamp banks to show the land, and the negative space where the swamp banks aren't which can be a hazard for your players, or it could be more interesting. You could do acid, you could do slime, you could do raging river water, lava, whatever you want. You could print stuff out and do it. All right, so fundamentally to build, you're kind of figuring out where you want water. So let's say we want this whole thing to be water, and you just connect these sort of end to end and build as you go, kind of frame out the area, and then you'd fill in the back. Like could use some forest floors or whatever, and I could just fill in this section here. So there's kind of three main ways to do negative space builds with these. Let's look at islands first, because that's kind of maybe it's the easiest. So fundamentally, an island is just a floating, some land that's surrounded by water, right? So the smallest level you could just take 4 of these little guys and make an island. And you can see the square, these basically are one playable square delineated on the top. Everything else kind of falls off. You could let people maybe have the side of the bank be difficult terrain or something, or they're at disadvantage if they're fighting there because it's kind of half land, half water. Fun options there. So if you want to get a little larger, you can use this end cap piece. And this is designed to sit with 2 different banks against it. So you could put 2 little guys against it like that, or you could use, if you were making like a peninsula, you could put it against like that. So this side is equivalent of any 2 of our banks. So you could do any combination of 2 banks pieces against it there. So this guy, you can make a little island with this thing. And if you want to get bigger, let's start using some other pieces. Maybe let's use some real corners. So let's use this big convex here. And this has an integrated stump lump, so you could put a little tree stump topper in there. You could put a dead tree on there. Let's put a dead tree on there because that looks neat. So then let's make a really small one. We can just take the concave, nestle it in there, maybe put a pair of these guys on one end and our end cap on the other. You have a cool little kind of horseshoe island. If you wanted to make it longer, you could elongate it out with these bits. Maybe we want to make it more interesting and knock these guys out and use that concave. And this one, now we're getting a very forested island, right? Because this has 2 stump lumps on it. So we could put, what do we have for toppers here? Let's put a gnarled tree on this guy. And a little dead snag on this guy. That's a tough spot to fight in. And if you do get into combat here, you can pop the trees off for combat. You know where the tree is to block line of sight and block movement because the stump is there, but you can pop it off so you can see your minis and move everybody around and the like. Also, when you're building, the idea with these is you line up the back of them with one of the lines on the grid. So you can see a grid on our water mat here. So I'm just lining basically these seams up. I'm lining them up with the 1 inch marks on the grid, and that will keep everything on grid. So you can see we have this square is in line with these squares, this square is lined up. This is delineating a square. So if you're ever wondering how do you get back on the grid, just line up one of these seams and one of these seams, and you should be stay on the grid forever. All right, so what other island variations can we do? Let's take we're going to take the diagonal. So this diagonal piece has a teardrop insert hole here, so you can take one of our teardrop insert pieces like this, pop it in there. This lets you change out what you have in there. You can use a Burroughs one, have it as a tunnel down. You could, if you want, you could put a thing on top of it. It lets you customize your pieces without having to get a whole bunch of large pieces. So we can do the same thing. We can wrap this guy with. Oof. Now, if we want to make a, let's play with some straights. Let's make one that has more playable space. So we can. For this, we're going to bring in the 3x3 swamp floor. Slide this in here. Now let's work our way around. So we have a right and a left swell. I guess the other way. This is, yeah. And I tell them the direction is this swells to the right. That's how it's the right swell. The energy's going to the right. And this one swells to the left. Energy's going this way. So left swell, right swell. So these guys, you can put them together. So if you're doing like a bank, you can put them together and it swells out 3 inches and then swells back. So if you put, for instance, if you put this against it, you can see the remaining space here is 1 bank's worth. So if you want to offset things by 3 inches, you can use these. They're also, it's good if you're doing a long straight run. Let's say we were doing a river or something, right? And I had a whole bunch of these in a row, and it felt very straight and repetitive. You could put these in, and you can keep on that same straight line, but this helps. All right, so these guys are useful for getting some playable space on your island, because if you put them together like this, now we have a whole bunch of surface to fill up on this other side. So let's put those guys there. We'll put an end cap at the end. I'm lining these up on the grid here. And now let's use this diagonal. Gives you some nice space here. I'm lining. Here's taking the little curve, little convex. Put that guy there. Now we have this one long straight line. So straight there, and then 2 more of these guys. Oof. Now this is like, there's a ton of interesting playable space on here, and this leaves you, you've got a lot of flat areas. You could start peppering in with some deadly plants or something to make it a cool challenge if you wanted. Another thing I like to do when I'm building islands is I take these tiny hummock pieces and then put them slightly off the shore, kind of break up the shoreline, and give players like a little stepping area, right? If you had an island here, you could put this guy in between or something, or maybe this was over there. It makes for that interesting jump. So now they can jump from here to there to there, or they can wade through the water in difficult terrain. Maybe there's a swamp beast in there. Who knows what? The other one, you could just start a real simple island. If you start here is this: take a 3x3. It's your center playable space, and then wrap around it with any of these banks. Really short. Or we could do another. These guys, swap that. Make yourself a little island. We've got these projecting roots that you can use that are designed to sit in our stump lumps, sit in the water, and then give you these those mangrove roots going down that sort of feel water-seeking plants. It's kind of neat to sort of switch up. So these are the same piece, but then they feel very different because we've topped them with different tree toppers. So I think that's all the basics of islands, and mostly the fun with islands is to create interesting areas to go with some dangerous space in between, and then let the players explore and have horrors awaiting them in the water. fill this guy. Let's make 2 islands together. See what it looks like. Oh, you know what I didn't do? We could do a little cove one. Would be a fun. Let's do a cove too. So this is like a cove. Oh, and you can use this insert as another little hopping spot to hop on, something like that. Let's do like a little cove because that's fun too. So we can do. I'm gonna take concave and the diagonal. And so the diagonal is basically doing the same thing as the concave. It's just cosmetically different, and it has the insert, so we could put something cool in there, like a trap or whatever. And then let's take these swells. Ooh. This is like a little kind of inlet. This can lead us right into our next thing is going to be. What are we going to do next? Maybe ponds we'll do next. So the simplest level, I'm just taking straights, wrapping straights around the outside of this thing. And then we have like a neat C-shaped island. The letter C, not the ocean. Bloop. And then you could, this would be a neat spot to put something. You could have, we could put some lily pads, used as a jumpy spot for people. Or this fallen log floating around there. It's another good spot to have players walk out and then have to make a leap or whatever. And this is, you could put the thing that they're trying to get, the MacGuffin could go in the middle there. Maybe they have to find this submerged, the sorrow nest or whatnot. All right, so that's the basic of violence. So next, let's look at ponds or small contained bodies of water, bogs and ponds and big puddles and the like, which was similar. We're already kind of heading in that direction. Let's look at ponds. So let's say this was a terrain tray, has metal in it. This was just a prototype cover, but our terrain trays are solid with metal. So let's say we had a swamp water terrain tray. We wanted to put this in our forest build, right? We were doing a bunch of forest around it. So the simplest thing to do is just surround it. And this will line up. Our prototypes are a little short because the resin shrinks. Put it in there. Put that over here. Boom. You just want to contain the water and then build around it, and then this becomes a little area of. Maybe we'll move this guy so you can see what we're doing. Right, so the remaining negative space is this little pond and the like. You can chain together a couple of terrain trays. You can cover up a whole bunch of it if you want. So, like, this is a pretty large one. Let's do like a really small. Let's just take this guy, 2 little tiny concaves, thing here. Something like that, and then boop. So you can make a little tiny one. Let's see if we can go even smaller. I think we can do smaller than that. I think we can. Let's go. Lots of basically just little concaves. This is like a very small little bug. So you basically just keep covering up the negative space until you have the amount of pond that you like. Or it could be a small lake. Little body of water, wet patches. All right, now let's look at rivers. All right, so for rivers, you essentially lay out some negative space, be it a terrain tray or texture mat or whatever, kind of get a sense of where you want to go, and then you rim it with your banks. So if we want to just at a base level do this could be a very plain, straight, kind of boring, wide river. Straight river. So, well, this isn't so exciting. Let's break it up and get a little more exciting. So, of course, you can also make it more narrow, right? So you can, if you want to keep everything on your 3-inch grid, you need to be careful moving these only 3 inches at a time. But if you're doing this whole separate section on the other side here, doesn't have to connect to here other than the negative space, then you've got the leeway to go 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, 7 inches, half inch, whatever you have to line up. So you could do something, right? Use something like this where you make the river more narrow. You could go really narrow if you want. Pushing, it's really up to you. Like if you were, if negative space is the only thing connecting it, then you can get off by 1 inch or 2. You can also, if you're using the 1x2 floors or the 2x2 floors, you also have the leeway. Then you can change your spacing and do something as organic as you want. So let's say we wanted to make a river that was. Let's break up these straights because it's not so exciting. So right now we have a big, long, boring straight run. So the easiest thing you can do is throw a couple of swells in there. Boom, boom. So that gives it a nice break. And now we don't have the same 4 pieces in a row, which is really nice. You can replicate the same geometry of the swell using the small concave pair of these guys. And let's see. There's a couple things you can do. One, we can do this with a couple of these guys and very easily make a bend in the river there. You could also replicate the swell by doing this and a straight. So that's essentially the same as the swell, and then you'd fill this with a 3x3. Maybe if you wanted, you could come back down the other side. And these will, when these are train trays, and these will be metal, these will have magnets, so they'll stick right to the train trays and won't drift around, which is really nice. So then this is an ideal place to put like a neat rock or something, or a point of interest. You can, I'm not sure what else can we do. If you want to put like a bigger, another way you can change the straight runs is using these transition pieces. We didn't look at these yet. So these are for transitioning your banks to our trifecta ledge pieces, but you can also use a pair of these in line like this to form an alternate straight. So that gives you good straight coverage. And then you can dress it up with one of these if you want. Feels like it's a neat little dip in the river there. If you want to, you could do an extreme turn. Let's try this. We're going to slide this down here. Throw this over here. Let's go. Let's try and use a full curve and see what happens. Can have that guy come out like this. Boom. Straight. So this makes like this is kind of like a slow pool, and this could be like the fast rapids over here, and you can put these guys in as a little place to jump across if you want. The tiny hummocks and the mossy rock mounds are really useful for breaking up the river, making it have some crossing points, something like that. Now let's put a big curve in this river. All right, so we're gonna use some of these are curved. This is the art for our curved raging river. So I have a 90-degree curve here. You put flowing into a 90-degree curve here. And once again, these will be metal terrain trays when they're done. This is just art samples, something to work with. So this going this way. All right. So now we have a river that's going to go like this and like this. So we have to dress it up, go around this corner. All right, so let's make this river more lively. Let's try to do a diagonal and see what that looks like. So I've started a diagonal here, but I want to get more diagonal. Let's get it a little more extreme. So I want to go all the way to the end here. So let's see. I'm gonna knock these guys out, and let's go. So for this one, I'm going to use, I only have 3 diagonals here, so I'm going to use a concave over here, give it a variety, but I think it'll work nicely. Boom, pow. Alright, so we have a nice diagonal river run. And you can even accentuate this more if you put that swell over there, come out over here, something like such, and one more. So you can use these, the swells also can continue your diagonal. So look at that, that's a nice diagonal river, looks very organic. And then you could change it up further if you wanted to, like put if you didn't like the 2 pools in a row, let's switch that out, and then put a tree on there. This will be better when it has some magnets in it to hold everything in place. Okay. So that's rivers. We have 2 more things to look at, which are gentle elevation rises and freestanding on a battlement. So let's look at elevation. All right, so let's look at doing gentle elevation rises with our swamp banks. So let's say we have, and we want to raise this thing up and sort of just do like a gentle rise. And so let's say we were working with this battle board. Final battle boards will have different art. It'll match this, and they'll have black edges, but I'll use this for now because it should be the right height. So let's say we wanted to go from here to here, and we want to like kind of keep going. I had this guy here, something like this. I'm doing a trail on the edge of this thing. Yeah, let's do this guy. All right, we'll do that guy there. So, the very simple thing you can do is then just take your swamp banks, throw them over these forest floors, and that gets you up a layer here. And you can kind of keep doing that, or do something interesting like that, a little bit here, and then have some gentle rise. And you can kind of keep going, right? We can go up another. Let's take these out so you can see what's going on. Maybe you can sort of you can keep going up and up and up. Sort of the limit being running out of pieces. So you could also do this right off of a battle mat or something. So let's say we had some sort of surface layer coverage, right? It was a so you're working with a battle mat, or maybe just terrain trace or whatever, and maybe I wanted to put this one piece of sculpted terrain on a dry erase board or a battle mat or whatever, and have feature some sort of kind of cool special. Maybe this is the special tree that has a star nest, right? When I build a thing. So then all you need to do is, just like you were building an island, rim this with banks, and you can transition down to any flat surface. So it lets you kind of build this like an island on any sort of printed surface and the like. Well, so we also have we have a compatibility video with these swamp banks showing how they work with our forest transition banks and the mountains and other escarpments in the old forest and whatnot, so you can take a look at that also. But these are all the basics of swamp banks. Thanks for watching.